So, putting it into perspective, this past week, Joe Biden proposed $6 trillion budget for 2022, for fiscal year 2022. Now, Donald Trump, he set the budget, for October 2020 through October 2021. Now that Joe Biden's in the office, it's his turn to do the budget for October 2021 through October 2022. In that 1 year span, in those 12 months, he has proposed to spend $6 trillion. And the reason that is just insane is because our revenue, the U.S. Treasury revenue, is only $3 trillion. So where are we going to get the other three? It's going to be printed. And that's given the fact that, it might be more that gets printed because we have all these other things that we're taking care of as a country. So now that you know this information about the Fed and the balance sheet and, all these things that have been happening, what do you think is going to do to the consumer price index? It's going to make it explode even more. All right. So I have a video from Peter Schiff where he talks about how the CPI has exploded and where it could actually take us a year from now. All right. Here's that video.
Now, the key is, though, looking at what's already happened so far this year. If you take the first 4 months of the year, consumer prices are already up by 2%. That is the Fed's goal, right? Their target of 2% a year inflation. And we've already hit the entire target in the first 1/3 of the year. Now, if you assume that the rest of the year is identical to the first 4 months, we just repeat the same numbers for the next 2 4-month periods, inflation for the entire year will come in at 6%, which is well above anything that the Fed should be able to consider acceptable when they're claiming with a straight face that their target is for inflation to average 2%. Obviously, nobody believes that we're going to get a repeat of the last 4 months over the next 2 4-month periods. But if you look at the numbers, why would you assume that the trend that's already in motion isn't going to stay in motion? If the current trend stays and every month we get a 0.2% increase, right? We were 0.4 in February, 0.6 in March, 0.8 in April. Maybe May prices will rise by a full percent. If we continue this acceleration from now through the end of the year, 2021, the CPI will increase by better than 20% for the year. Now, I don't think that this curve is going to continue to accelerate at the same pace. So I would bet that the CPI is not going to be 20% for 2021, although it is possible. But I do think that we're going to end up north of 10%. So I think we're going to continue to pick up speed when it comes to inflation, albeit it may be at a somewhat slower rate than what we've experienced in the acceleration over the past few months. But I expect many more months throughout the year where we will have monthly increases that are higher than the 0.8% increase that just broke that record all the way back to 1981.
All right, so very important clues in what Peter Schiff said in that clip, because right now, if we continue the same pace that we're doing, we're gonna end up, over 20% inflation. He thinks he might adjust, between in the teens, right? That's what pretty much he's saying. So, just think, if right now the inflation, the official inflation that we're seeing is only 6%. And the White House is paying attention, the Fed is paying attention, the markets are paying attention, and everyday people are starting to pay attention. Imagine what's it going to look like when it's north of 10, north of 20, north of 30, and north of 40, right before 50, before it becomes hyperinflation. Now, this is what hyperinflation is. Hyperinflation, according to Investopedia.com, is a term to describe rapid, excessive, and out-of-control general price increases in an economy. While inflation is a measure of the pace of rising prices for goods and services, hyperinflation is rapidly rising inflation, typically measuring more than 50% per month. So meaning that once you hit the 50% threshold, really, things get out of control just very, very fast. because people start to panic a lot more. And that's just everyday people. They'll freak out. But the people who are investing all this money in the markets, the government, and all these other places, they're just going to freak completely out. They're going to leave the country. They're going to take their money, cut their losses and go somewhere else. That's going to create the hyperinflation that we're all waiting for. Because once all these people who are panicking, all these creditors and everything else, they flee to, let's say, China, as I'm going to be showing you here in just a minute. Once they flee to China, they're going to come back, or, all those dollars are going to come back. They're going to hit the economy, and then we're going to see an even bigger explosion, because we are the one nation in the world that has ever gathered this type of debt. And imagine if Venezuela and Zimbabwe and others, they had very, very high inflation, unimaginable inflation with $115 billion in debt. What are we going to look like with 40, 50, 60, 70 trillion dollars in debt? That's not counting the unfunded liabilities, because if you count us right now, we're over $130 trillion in debt. So it's gonna create a lot of panic. That is the reason why you have to make sure that you prepare for your lifestyle to change from that point forward.
The Man-Made Survival Show.